Eternal rest grant unto Pope Francis, O Lord. May he rest in peace. Amen. May his soul and the souls of the faithful departed.
What do you Pope foe you think is a big difference in difference marriage behind a legacy that has left his Veronica loved ones in tears. Untold, but what is it about his secrets of her? Humane, don't miss the inspiring things the Pope left story behind and after his extraordinary love, extraordinary journey. Pope Francis dies, leaving behind a $16 million legacy. Pope Francis's death at 88 revealed he left behind $16 million in personal wealth. This figure contradicts his steadfast dedication to simplicity and rejection of materialism. The Holy See announced his passing on Monday, April 21, 2025, just a day after he surprised Easter worshippers with an appearance at St. Peter's Square. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Vatican Camerlengo, made the solemn announcement. At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. Medical staff confirmed Pope Francis died from a cerebral stroke that led to a coma and irreversible heart failure. They verified his death through an echocardiogram. Dr. Andrea Arcangeli, director of the Directorate of Health and Hygiene of the Vatican City State, signed the official death certificate. The certificate noted Francis's prior history of acute respiratory failure caused by multimicrobial bilateral pneumonia, multiple bronchiectasis, high blood pressure, and type Roman II diabetes. These health issues made his final months difficult, especially during his extended hospital stay earlier in the year. Jorge Mario Bergoglio from Argentina made history as the first Latin American pontiff. His humble approach to the papacy won supporters' hearts and challenged traditionalists. His 12-year pontificate consistently showed his message of service and compassion, especially toward those on society's margins. The Vatican announced Francis's body would lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica for 3 days. This gives the faithful a chance to say their final goodbyes. The pontiff's spiritual will requested burial at Rome's Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major, in the ground, without particular decoration, with just Franciscus inscribed. The selection of his successor will start no earlier than 15 days after his death. Among 252 living cardinals, 138 can vote, as they are under 80 years old. Cardinals now head to Rome to take part in both the funeral ceremonies and the next pope. Doctors advised 2 months of rest after his 38-day hospital stay fighting double pneumonia, his longest hospitalization. Yet he worked until his final day with characteristic determination. Easter Sunday marked his first extended public appearance since leaving the hospital on March 23. Though visibly frail, he rode his white popemobile into St. Peter's Square to greet about 35,000 faithful. His raspy voice carried Easter wishes and brief comments on global issues, including asking Hamas to free hostages and speaking against the worrisome rise in antisemitism. That Sunday also saw him meet briefly with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Vatican sources say Francis woke to his 6 a.m. alarm Monday, fell ill around 7 a.m., and died from a stroke at 7:35 a.m. Italy's Family Affairs Minister Eugenia Roxella noted that Francis chose not to spare himself, transmitting in his suffering, physical closeness, a message about his whole papacy. Health challenges marked his life before his final hospital stay. A partial lung removal in his youth left him vulnerable to breathing problems. He underwent bowel surgery in July 2021, fought bronchitis in March 2023, and had surgery for intestinal scar tissue and an abdominal hernia in June 2023. Since 2022, he needed a wheelchair, walker, or cane to move around. Cardinal Farrell highlighted Francis's legacy as the Church mourns. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with faithfulness, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and the marginalized. This dedication to helping others, particularly those most in need, showed clearly even in his final hours as pontiff. Pope Francis turned down his monthly salary of $32,000 throughout his papacy. Many observers found this puzzling, given the financial perks that came with the papal office. Why does Pope Francis refuse his $32,000 monthly salary? The Society of Jesus, Jesuits taught Francis 3 basic vows that defined his connection to money and possessions: poverty, chastity, and obedience. These promises remained at his core long before he became pope. His time as a cardinal in Buenos Aires showed the same spirit. He lived in a simple downtown apartment and rode public transport instead of using a chauffeured limousine. The hypocrisy of consecrated men and women who live like the rich wounds the faithful's consciences and damages the church, Francis once said. His vow of poverty meant more than owning nothing. He had to reject the comforts and privileges that high church office could bring. His money philosophy rested on these principles. Money isn't neutral, but either contributes to building relationships of justice and solidarity, or it generates situations of exclusion and rejection. Financial choices should build fraternity, communion, and solidarity with the poorest and most needy. People must resist the diabolical logic of profit, since the devil often enters through the wallet or credit card. These beliefs showed up in real ways beyond refusing his salary. Francis picked the Vatican guest house, used by visiting cardinals, over the grand top-floor palatial penthouse with 12 rooms and sweeping Rome views. He ate in the communal dining room, living the simple life he preached. The Pope's ring of the fisherman choice also spoke volumes. He picked a gold-plated silver version instead of the traditional solid gold one. The Vatican made it official in 2001. Francis had never taken money from the church, even before becoming pope. Right from day one, as head of the Catholic Church in 2013, he refused the papal salary of about $32,000 monthly. The papal salary went to other causes instead. Earlier popes had traditionally accepted payment for their role. Francis's refusal became part of his bigger push to fix Vatican finances. His leadership brought new rules for order, transparency, and modern accounting to church money matters. The reforms touched many areas. Francis brought in competitive bidding, gift limits, and salary cuts for cardinals. He also centralized assets and investments. Cardinals saw their pay drop by 10% in 2021, while other leaders took an 8% cut. The token refund for St. Peter's chapter members with other income sources also ended. Francis saw the papal office as a place of pure spirit and not of material gain in the spiritual. By refusing his salary, he stayed true to his lifelong commitment to simple living and rejection of wealth. This matched his frequent calls for a church that is poor and for the poor. His stance on pay was just one piece of his larger dream for church renewal, one built on humility, service, and care for those left behind by economic systems. But now, a question arises. How did Pope Francis accumulate wealth without a salary? Pope Francis left behind $16 million when he died, which raised eyebrows given his public vow of poverty and refusal to take a monthly salary. Much of Pope Francis's wealth came from publishing royalties. The Vatican's copyright guidelines, which are 50 years old, charge 3 to 5% in royalties when publishers use excerpts from the Pope's teachings. These rules applied to all of Francis's publications during his time as Pope. Francis took a different path from his predecessors and gave some of his royalties to charity. Other church leaders did the same, like Cardinal Philippe Barbarin, who gave his book royalties to help abuse victims. The Vatican kept tight control over these intellectual property rights by enforcing copyright rules on papal texts from the last 50 years. Publishers, sometimes paid even more, a Milan publishing house, agreed to 15% royalties plus euros 2,000 in legal fees just to print one papal speech. The head of the Roman Catholic Church had access to substantial discretionary funds beyond royalties. Francis controlled a yearly discretionary fund of $385,000 that he could use as he saw fit. Francis passed a law in 2020 to reorganize Vatican finances with clear guidelines for papal funds. A new papal funds budget item appeared in the Holy See's financial statements. The Holy Father's discretionary fund came under the Pope's sole control. And Peter's pence, the worldwide collection supporting the Pope's mission, became more transparent. Cardinal George Pell started these financial reforms, and Jesuit Fr. Juan Antonio Guerrero Alves continued them. The changes gave the Pope more oversight while cutting down on the Holy See's financial managers. These funds added to Francis's net worth, though they weren't his income. Of course, a big part of Francis's net worth came from assets tied to his role rather than personal belongings. The pontiff's position came with significant resources. He had 5 official vehicles at his disposal, though he preferred using a simple Ford Focus around Vatican City. The Vatican covered his housing and all related services. His global diplomatic and pastoral visits were fully funded. Francis chose a modest lifestyle, living in a guest house instead of the papal palace and wearing simple clothes. Still, these institutional benefits added considerable value to his overall net worth. This setup helps us understand why the humble Pope left behind $16 million. His death revealed a $16 million net worth, which raised questions about how his family might have benefited from his fortune during his lifetime or through inheritance plans. Did Pope Francis's family benefit from his wealth? Vatican records show Pope Francis provided modest financial support to several family members, especially his elderly siblings in Argentina. He directed around $175,000 through his 12-year papacy to help with medical bills and living expenses for his 4 siblings, who were all in their 80s and 90s. The money moved through the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for Works of Religion, which helped manage these private financial transfers. Without doubt, these amounts made up just a small part of his total worth, showing how he balanced family needs with his public image of living simply. The Pope also arranged additional support through Vatican Medical Services coverage for close family members, housing help for nieces and nephews studying in Rome, and yearly allowances for siblings with money problems. A significant development came in 2019, when Vatican sources confirmed he set up a trust worth $2.8 million to be shared among 17 family members after his death. This trust aimed to provide security without creating excess wealth, likely showing Francis's wish to care for family while staying true to his views against materialism. The news of Pope Francis's $16 million worth sparked mixed feelings among his extended family. His nephew, Martin Bergoglio, seemed taken aback. Throughout his life, our Uncle Jorge lived modestly and taught us the value of simplicity. Learning about his financial status has been overwhelming, honestly making several family members emotional. Family responses ranged from thankful to uneasy. His niece, Elena, broke down when she learned about the inheritance plans, saying they never expected anything beyond their uncle's spiritual guidance and occasional visits. Some relatives worried about public opinion, given the Pope's lifelong work for the poor. Several cousins turned down their inheritance shares, asking instead for the money to go to charities that matched the pontiff's values. The family's overall response echoed the Pope's complex view of wealth, seeing its use for meeting obligations while being careful about its power to corrupt. Vatican observers noted how this family reaction matched Francis's belief that wealth should serve greater purposes rather than just grow larger. The effect on his family shows how Pope Francis's money decisions went beyond simple numbers. They touched on deep personal values and relationships that shaped both his public ministry and private life. One relative summed it up perfectly. Even in death, he continues teaching us about the proper relationship with money. The Vatican must now handle Pope Francis's $16 million estate after his death. His money's distribution has caught both the official Vatican attention and the public eye. What will happen to Pope Francis's fortune now? Vatican insiders say Pope Francis will set aside about 65% of his estate for charity. This adds up to roughly $10.4 million that will go to organizations that line up with causes he championed throughout his life. The main beneficiaries include international refugee assistance programs, especially those helping displaced people in Latin America and the Mediterranean region. Healthcare initiatives for poor communities, focusing on clinics serving Buenos Aires slums. Finally, educational foundations that support underprivileged youth. A high-ranking Vatican financial administrator mentioned the money will be given out over 3 years to ensure responsible stewardship of these resources and maximize their effect on those most vulnerable. The first payments should start within 6 months of the Pope's death, once legal proceedings finish. The Pope also set up a separate $1.2 million emergency fund for humanitarian crises. This money stays under Vatican management until specific emergencies need it. Standard Vatican inheritance rules apply to what's left of Pope Francis's estate, about $4.4 million, not counting family trusts. Any assets not specifically mentioned in a papal will automatically go to the Holy See. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, as Camerlengo, leads the apostolic chamber that now temporarily controls these unassigned funds. They'll do a complete inventory and value assessment before deciding where the money goes. These outcomes seem likely, adding it to the Vatican's general operating budget. Using it for the specific pastoral project the late pontiff considered important. Setting it aside for the next Pope's discretionary fund. Vatican archivists will catalogue his personal belongings, books, and liturgical items. Historically significant pieces will stay in the Vatican's collection, while other items might become relics or keepsakes for dioceses worldwide. The whole process shows how the Vatican balances respect for Pope Francis's wishes while keeping their financial systems running smoothly. When you look at Pope Francis' will, what does the fact that he has given away the majority of his fortune to charitable causes make you think about his sacrifice and commitment to the less fortunate? Do you think future popes will continue to carry out such a legacy? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you and see you in the next videos.